Hello, I'm so happy you could join me in today's tutorial. We're going to be painting a loose landscape, and the colours we're going to be using is titanium white, Hansa yellow, sap green, phthalo blue and Quinacridone magenta. I'll pop all this in the description box. And I've just got two flat edge brushes here, and I've got two different sizes. I'm going to try and stick with the larger one to keep it really loose and abstract looking, but we may need to go in with a slightly smaller one, we'll see. And I've got a canvas board here, and I'm going to pop the photo up here, and feel free to use this photo as you wish. You don't have to follow me exactly, you can kind of make it your own, but really what I want to give you today is the ability to take a reference photo and apply it in a loose, bold, impressionistic way without getting too hung up on the details. Now first what I want to do, because I noticed that this photo has quite like a yellow undertone, so if you've got a yellow ochre you can go ahead and use that. I'm going to kind of just make a bit of a light yellow with some yellow, white. I'm going to add a little bit of the magenta just to give it like a creamy feel. And I'm just going to pop that all over the canvas. Now what that's going to do is a few things. First of all, it's going to take away that whiteness, so that when we apply paint on the top, rather than it just feeling like white underneath, it kind of gives it this more rich feeling, which is really going to help with the colour layering. Secondly, what it can do is help us with our values, because any colour looks dark next to white, right? Even this colour here is looking dark next to the white palette. So when we apply this all in the background, it gives us a bit more of a realistic view of those values, which is the lightness or the darkness. This is called grounding the canvas, and this is what many artists do as the kind of first layer. It's not necessary, nothing is necessary in art, but it really does just give it a really nice kind of beginning to a painting. And you don't need to be careful about it, because we're going to be covering all this up. So just pop that paint on any old how. Now once you've done that, you can wait for it to dry naturally, or you can always give it a bit of a hair dryer if you want. And rinse off your brush really, really well and dab it dry either on a paper towel. I've just got a little paper towel here, and just take off any excess water. So we'll just wait for that to dry now. So once that's dry, or near enough dry, let's have a little look at our reference photo. Now you'll notice it's square. That's kind of intentional, because I want you to really think about where we're going to put things. And it's important to look at the composition and not to just copy it directly, but to really decide where we want things to go. And so now I'm going to start to block out our different parts of the painting. To do that, I might just use a bit of sap green. I love this sap green, it's such a beautiful colour. Now you can decide where to put your horizon. You could even have it quite high up and have lots of the hills. I think I'm going to put mine about here, just kind of below the middle, and that way I can have a lot of the sky as well, kind of. So yeah, I'm going to pop that in roughly there and get a good feel for like where you want it as well. As I say, you don't have to do it the same as me. And then I might have a little think about where I want this tree. So composition wise, I think maybe starting here and coming up to about here is quite nice. And then we've just got like the rolling hills that can kind of come from there. So we don't need to worry too much about like blocking it in perfectly. I don't necessarily want a sketch, but I just kind of want to get a main idea of where those big shapes are going to be. So we can kind of pop those in. You can already see it starting to come together. So I like to work from the background first. So when we have a look at those trees in the distance, you can see they almost have like a bit of a bluey tinge. That's because the further away into the distance something is, the more bluey it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of blue and the green together to make this nice turquoise. I'm going to add a little bit of magenta in there and a little bit of white to get this nice cream. I'm going to add a little bit of water to that. So what we've done, we've created a nice turquoise, but because we added a bit of pink, it's also taken down the saturation slightly so that it's not too vibrant, not too saturated, because it's in the distance. So you can use your brush, and this is where we're going to start to use our brush to create those loose marks, because you know, this is where we don't really want to be like getting all in there with a tiny little bit of detail. So what I'm doing, I'm just taking my big wide brush, and you can hold it kind of like flat to the painting and kind of just bring on those marks. Now this is still quite loose because we're still kind of mapping it out, blocking it out a little bit. So we will go back over the top of this. And then what I might do is take my sap green, add a bit more to that there, and kind of go over this section here. And then you'll see from the reference photo, there's kind of like a big yellow streak. So what I might do is take some of the yellow and add that in. You can see this lovely, bright lime green. So I'm going to start to pop that in some of the background, like so. And really it is just a case of kind of working through each layer at a time. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a small little section and simplifying that into a colour, into a line. Then you'll see like this real orange streak. So what we'll do, we'll take some of the yellow and add a bit of the magenta. You can see this lovely orange. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to take that, and it's up to you on like the kind of brush strokes you do. You can either kind of just go to the side, or I think I might want it a little bit thicker. I'm going to add a little bit of white into that as well. So this is yellow, magenta with a bit of white. Actually, it's very similar to the background, which is why we kind of did that as well. So I'm just going to pop lines. So you'll notice I'm not getting like very detailed, and definitely not going backwards and forwards. That's how we can end up with a very kind of over blended painting. We want to do these little lines of detail even, and just condense it into a shape, into a line, and not kind of like keep going backwards and forwards with that. And I'm going to rinse off my brush again, and what we'll do next, we'll kind of come to this section under the tree, which again I can see is very turquoise. So I'm going to add a little blue with the green, and I'm going to pop that in here. And again, I'm just going to move it to the side. And the brush stroke, if you kind of like pull it sideways, it mimics those lines that you can see in the fields, which really helps kind of bring that technique into the painting. I might just bring that here as well. Now, of course, there's no gap in the photo, but I'm adding a gap. I don't know why. It just feels good to me to do that, but you definitely don't have to do that. I'm just going to lift that up there so we can see. Okay, and then I can kind of see like a dark, we have a very dark hedge coming up here. So what I might do is I might take some sap green and add a little bit of magenta, because what that's going to do, it's going to make that super dark, almost like a dark brown. And I'm kind of going to just use the very edge and tip of my brush and just going to kind of bring that down. And then I'm going to take the corner of my brush and kind of dab to create some tree shapes. So we can take the corner of the brush, and I want you to keep looking at the reference photo as well, because what we don't want to do is just mindlessly kind of keep making shapes. We want to really be intentional about every single time our brush goes on that canvas. It needs to be a very clear, intentional decision. And that confidence will also come with time. Okay, I think that's fine for now. I'm going to rinse off my brush and take off any excess water again. So the next streak, I can see yet again another orange. So I'm going to take some yellow and a bit of magenta. And here we're doing so many different skills, because we're looking at the composition, we're deciding where to put things, we're colour mixing, and we're making sure that we are popping the right shapes in compared to the reference photo, which comes under the drawing umbrella. So there's so many different skills that apply to this. And technique, because right now the way I'm holding my brush, I'm kind of scraping the paint off and I'm holding it again perpendicular to get that kind of straight line and moving that up. So there's so many different skills that we are using and we're kind of bouncing back and forth in between each one. And these are all the super important skills that are necessary to create paintings that you love and feel intentional and can feel confident in. It's really about having that confidence that, sorry, I've just added a bit of white to this yellow mixture. It's really about having that confidence so that you can feel really good when you're painting, because that's why we paint, right? It's to feel good. I'm just going to pop this highlight here as well, because I feel like there's also a bit of that lighter yellow there. And to really build confidence in yourself and feel confident, it is just about not just practicing the skills, but really making sure that you understand the different components in a painting, which is what you're doing today. So I'm super proud of you. So the next point we're going to do is we're going to go back to the green and really just going to finish off this bottom section, which is fun. And I think for this, I might just take sap green, because this is a bit translucent as well, sap green. And I'm gonna, again, put my brush, and what I might do is just kind of like pull it down, because in the background we used sideward strokes because that was in the distance. Up front, we wanna give it some texture. And this keeps on falling down. I'm being too excited with my brush. So yeah, what I might do is just kind of scuffle it. And this isn't to say this is what you should necessarily be doing, just like have a play around with what feels good to you. But it's a really nice way to add a bit of texture. And then I think what I might do is, as I kind of go back into this section here, which is a bit more of a distance, I might go back into those sideward kind of strokes. And then on this section, I'm just gonna like put my brush flat and pull that across. And what that does is you can kind of see the layer underneath that we did, but it gives it a really nice bit of texture. And then for now, what I'm going to do is take some of the sap green and I'm going to add a bit of the magenta again so that it's like a dark brown. And then I'm going to pop that at the base of my tree and kind of bring that up as like a part of the shadow. Now we can kind of go in and kind of finish that off a bit later. What I want to do next is go into the sky. So we've kind of done a base layer. And what's really nice about this is that we can leave that to dry and go back in. And that's what creates this loose, bold feeling, because we don't have to be careful, because anything we don't like, we can go back in and edit later. And with each layer, we can basically just refine it. Okay, so for this next part, I'm going to take some of the phthalo blue, running out of palette space here. I'm going to add a bit of white to that to make this lovely sky blue. Now this does feel quite an intense blue, which is totally okay if that's what you want to go for. I think I might tone it down slightly, and because blue and orange are complete opposite on the colour wheel, they're going to tone each other down. So what we need to do is create a bit of an orange. So I might take a different brush with this so we don't mix the colours too much. Now this is a huge tip in colour mixing. So I want you to take some magenta and some of the yellow till you get this nice orange. Doesn't have to be like a perfect true orange, just kind of any orange will do. And then we're going to take a bit of this and add it in to there. Now if it starts to go a bit green, that's totally fine. Just add in a bit more magenta. And what you'll see, it's more of a muted blue. If we carried on doing this, we'd eventually get to a grey. But if I put it there, you can see, hopefully you can see, it's a bit more of a muted colour, a bit more of like a toned back colour. So if you don't want kind of like that bright blue that feels a bit too intense and get a bit more of a sky blue, that's a really nice hack. And I'm just going to take my brush, fairly watery, not too watery, but I'm just going to take it from the side and kind of paste that across. I'm going to be using big bold brush strokes again because this is a loose painting and that's kind of the feeling that we want. And with the sky as well, this is where we can really add in a bit of energy and movement. So you can kind of go around in a circle, or you can kind of keep it. I think because I've got a lot of lines, I quite like to keep these lines going, and I definitely need some more paint. So I'm going to take some more of the phthalo blue and take a bit more of that orange. And yet, because it seemed to go a bit greeny, I'm just going to pop some of the magenta in there. And a bit of the white. In fact, we want a kind of more white as we move down. And don't worry if you can see the kind of underneath. I kind of like that as well. So yeah, I'm going to add a bit more white to this, probably a lot more white actually, and maybe a bit more of the magenta, a bit more of the orange, and then kind of meet that horizon. And around the tree, what can be nice is when you have like a flat edge brush, we can kind of just use the shape of the brush to kind of carve in, and we can totally go back over the tree as well. But just for now, I'll just create some little shapes around that tree. Now, when you kind of meet that horizon, you can kind of take the flat edge and kind of bring it down. Or you can go across. It's totally up to you. Each of us are different. I kind of like it when it's not like completely perfectly flat. I think it makes it look like a bit more bold and impressionistic. So. And so as you can see, that kind of sky is a bit flat, and on the picture you see that nice lighter tone coming through. So I'm going to add that now. I'm going to take quite a bit of the white, and you can see like kind of a warm orange glow. So I'm going to take some more of that orange. Like the clouds look like they've kind of got a warm tinge. And now I'm going to kind of bring that in. And if your paint's still wet underneath, it might blend. If it's dry underneath, it will sit on top. Either is totally fine. And what this does, it kind of just gives that sky just a bit more depth. It makes you kind of feel like it's in the background more. Now, something I love as well about these flat edge brushes is that you can create really beautiful skies, and you kind of see those wispy sort of clouds. If I just take some white on the edge of my brush and I can swirl it around a little bit, and then just having to think about these wispy clouds, and can kind of use my brush to bring those into the sky. And as we mentioned before, if there's anything you do that you don't like, it's no problem because we can edit. Sometimes less is more. So we can kind of like bring in that hazy cloud. And really just playing with the paint. This bit's like super fun. And then just to give it even more contrast, I might just take a really light colour and just pop that in right near the horizon. And putting the paint on quite thickly can really give it such a nice texture as well. So now I'm just going to rinse off my brushes. And at this point, all of our paintings will look slightly different. This is usually the part where I kind of go, get a cup of coffee, sit and look at it for a bit, and wonder what or if I want to do anything else to it. Of course, this is where the temptation comes in to like add little details and play around. But if you're wanting like a bold painting, then it is really best to just keep it super simple. I think something I would like to do is kind of embellish this a little bit more. So I'm going to take some sap green on the edge of my brush and just kind of add into these trees a little bit more. And then I'm going to take a little bit of the sap green with the yellow again to get this nice lime green. And then I'm just going to add that into the trees too to kind of show like little highlights where the sun might be hitting them. And then also kind of using that up in the forefront as well. Maybe even add in a little bit of white with a little bit of yellow just to lighten that. Because in the foreground it's really nice to have like kind of a range of colours. We kind of want those lights and the darks next to each other. And also maybe a little bit in the tree. And taking some of that magenta and the green to make kind of like a dark, I'm just going to kind of re-outline that bottom tree just to give it that real nice shadow. And then even kind of like this hedge come in there. But that is a very kind of basic way of breaking down any reference photo and bringing it into a loose impressionistic painting, with really just letting your brushes, especially with a flat edge, really just do most of the work. Thank you so much for painting with me guys today, and make sure to tag me in on your beautiful creations if you post them on Instagram or Facebook. I absolutely love seeing your versions. Make sure to hit that notification bell on YouTube so that you get notified every time I post a new video so that you don't miss out. We've got some really exciting stuff coming in the next few weeks. So thank you so much for watching. As always, lots of love. Bye.